Senator Edwin Sifuna.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to also contribute. First, let me say that I have been privileged, Honorable Speaker, to serve on the SBC for 2 consecutive sessions. And despite some of the aspersions that have been cast, especially by Senator Mungatana, I think the report that was given in Naivasha of the midterm performance of this House is indicator to the work that has been put in by the SBC in ensuring that we process our business here. So, Honorable Speaker, I felt as part of the leadership of the majority coalition that we now need to give opportunity to other people to also experience this Senate Business Committee. And in fact, when members talk about that anxiety about the speed with which some of the business is moving, especially bills in this House, I don't think from our side there is somebody who is more passionate about the speed at which business is moving than Senator Crystal Asige. So I am hoping that with her in that committee, she will ensure that that which she has wished to see now happens under her guidance. Honorable Speaker, there is another issue that I need to raise as a leader in the House on the question of the speed with which we process bills here. It is also a question of dedication and quorum, presence of members on this floor. I remember at those meetings of the SBC, we have struggled, and the whips especially have felt the weight. Honorable Speaker, when you look at an order paper has almost 30 bills and they keep recurring week after week. Honorable Speaker, we want to ask members that this last 2 years of the life of this Senate, people appear to process those bills, and especially the sponsors of the bills. Honorable Speaker, how many times have we had to drop bills because the sponsors were not in the House? So I also want to urge that whereas SBC can prioritize that business, we need the sponsors of the bills to be here, Honorable Speaker. Finally, Honorable Speaker, there's a matter that has been raised here, and I'm sure you've said you're going to give guidance, but also as members of the House and the leadership, we can also guide. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is very elaborate. It's very elaborate. You will see it starts out by defining what Parliament is, then separating the roles of the Senate and the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, it goes to be specific enough as to the roles of each of those houses, the matters that can be processed there, and the matters that cannot be processed there. On the question of which party is a majority party, there is absolutely no mention throughout the entire document of the Constitution of the Senate. In my view, it means that the leadership or the designation of a majority party is set in the National Assembly. And I will tell you why I think that, Honorable Speaker. Because it would be very absurd, Honorable Speaker, as SG of ODM, for my party to be the majority down there, and I'm in a minority here. Honorable Speaker, sometimes when you get communications from this coalition, for instance, our membership of the PSC, there is only one person who writes those letters to you, and that is the Secretary General of Azimio. Honorable Speaker, would he write there in the National Assembly, he writes as a leader of a majority party, and here he writes as a leader of a minority party? These are some of the absurdities that I think would arise if we would not follow the designation. And by the way, Honorable Speaker, I want to be very clear that we in the majority coalition are going to ensure we enforce that court order, because we are believers in the rule of law. Once a court has pronounced itself, Senator Khalwale, you look for another seat. You don't insist on the one that you'll be told is not your seat. So therefore, Honorable Speaker, you cannot tell us, a member of the Senate cannot stand here and say, oh, the courts are out there and we are here. We exist in a constitutional order that the things that happen here have consequences outside, and that the process of checks and balances and oversight requires that other organs also look into the issues that are being done by this particular institution. So therefore, Honorable Speaker, we will not allow people to conflate issues. If Azimio is a majority party in the National Assembly, it follows that we are the majority in this House. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Mungatana. Just a minute, Senator Mungatana. Senator Mungatana, just a minute. You know, in the 8th, 9th Parliament, you used to stand and wave to get to catch the Speaker's eye. Now we went digital. You can just press intervention and I'll see. But what is your point of honor? Give him the mic.
Mr. Speaker, when we are addressing the nation from the floor of this House, we must bear
Honorable Speaker.
So don't comment on it.
Yes, because I caught the tail end of the submissions by my colleague from Nandi on some of the unfortunate pronouncements we had from the National Assembly yesterday regarding the decision by this House to award 415 million shillings to county governments. Honorable Speaker, I think there are things that we as a House have to make very clear. Number one, when we ask for more resources to be devolved to county governments, it's not to take away from the CDF or the National Affirmative Action Fund in the National Assembly. I think what some honorable members in the National Assembly were trying to do is to poison the mind of Kenyans that, in fact, we're going to raise those funds in order to raise the 24 billion extra that this House passed for county governments. Number two, Honorable Speaker, I want the National Assembly also to address itself to the question of whether there is corruption, mismanagement, and misuse of resources in the national government. So that when they stand up and castigate county governments and say, oh, all these people travel with their girlfriends, it's not as if officers in the national government do not have girlfriends that they travel with. Mr. Speaker, if we are going to have a conversation, I think that conversation has to be an objective conversation. Mr. Speaker, finally, there has to be also a time that in this country, we demonstrate to each individual county how the money that has been allocated to the national government is spread across the 47 counties. Because there is inordinate focus, Mr. Speaker, on the money that is sent to counties from this particular House, and it represents less than 10% of the budget. Mr. Speaker, every time you ask, why are roads not being built in Nairobi? Mr. Speaker, in Nairobi alone, we have 50 stalled road projects. When you ask, you say, oh, but Nairobi received 20 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, an analysis was done of the distribution of resources at the national level from the Kenya Rural Roads Authority and from Kenya. Mr. Speaker, and by illustration, this was an analysis of the constituencies allocation from Kera and Kura in Kiambu County. And we will not be surprised that the person who was castigating Senate yesterday, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, the Member of Parliament for Kikuyu, Mr. Speaker, out of the money that is allocated, 350 million shillings allocated to Kiambu County and Akura, 220 million shillings has somehow found its way to Kikuyu constituency from where this Member of Parliament comes from. Mr. Speaker, 94% of the money under Kera is utilized in Kikuyu constituency alone, 1.45 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. And if you ask Honorable Ichung'wah to add money to the counties, Nairobi alone, Mr. Speaker, the bill for electricity that is owed to Kenya Power is 1.5 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. So that the money that Ichung'wah receives is enough to pay our electricity bills here.
Senator Gloria, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am aware we are discussing county issues, but Mr. Speaker, we still have to be guided by our standing orders. And they are very clear about discussing any other member of, a member of parliament, either from the Senate, Mr. Speaker, or from here. And imputing improper motive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I understand, Mr. Speaker,
order,
allow me.
Honorable, order,
allow me.
Faki, order.
Mr.
Proceed.
Speaker, protect me. I'm just saying, I understand that we are trying to highlight on the issues of devolution, Mr. Speaker. But can the Honorable Senator of Nairobi try and make his point without discussing another member of parliament who is actually not in the House, Mr. Speaker? That is my point of order.
Senator Gloria, which standing order has been violated?
Mr. Speaker, on, I think it's 98, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just allow me, because I know that this is how we are used to sitting me down. There is even content 101, Mr. Speaker, contents of speech. If you go to 101.3, it shall be out of order to use offensive or insulting language, whether in respect of the senators or other. Now, 4, no senator shall impute improper motive to any other senator or to a member of National Assembly, except upon a specific and substantive motion, of which at least 3 days' notice has to be given, calling in question the conduct of that senator or member of parliament. Mr. Speaker, if we want to discuss about the Honorable Member of Parliament, Kimani Ichung'wah, Mr. Speaker, Sifuna should just bring a substantive motion and we can discuss his budget of his constituency and whether he's using spending his money or not. Mr. Speaker, Kimani Ichung'wah is not in the house today, so let Sifuna limit his elaborations and discussions to devolution and whatever is. We're leaving out Kimani Ichung'wah from this situation. Thank you.
Order, honorable senators. The Senator for Nairobi, as you make your intervention, kindly adhere to that standing order. Do not impute any improper motive on either your honorable colleagues, senators, or a member of parliament. So kindly proceed as advised.
I am well guided, Honorable Speaker, but I was thinking that colleagues in this House would be more defensive of the decisions of this House because yesterday the entire Senate was being discussed, Honorable Speaker. And in fact, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable senator.
Mr. Speaker, this is an extract of an analysis of the road allocations by those two national government entities in Kiambu County as a demonstration.
Senator Gloria.
Mr. Speaker, you must protect me from people who think that by rising on points of order against me, I'm going to make them famous. Because I see them sharing on social media that Sifuna and so are in an exchange. You will have to find your own fame by the quality of debate you bring to this floor. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude. Let me conclude by saying, this, Mr. Speaker,
to conclude.
That the discussion about allocation of resources, about the needs of the county governments and the challenges to devolution have to be had in a sober space and with context, Mr. Speaker, because as I was explaining to you before the point of order, 1.4 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, is the amount of money that we require as Nairobi to pay off all our debts at Kenya Power so that all these members who come to Nairobi from those rural constituencies can continue to enjoy those services that the city provides. So when people come here and castigate decisions of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, and attack devolution on the basis of malpractices here and there, yet those similar malpractices are actually present even in the national government. And I will be hoping, Speaker, as I conclude, that when this House puts together its mediation team, they will send serious senators to the mediation team who will not go there to try and defend Kimani Ichung'wah. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable senators. Before I ask the clerk to call the next order, I have this message to pass. Honorable senators, I wish to report to the Senate that I have, pursuant to Standing Order 46,